To say something of the dog, a primer on navigating the utter horror of our furry friends. Humans have been keeping dogs around as pets for roughly 30,000 years. Evidence suggests that as far back as 40,000 years ago, a genetic divergence occurred between dogs and wolves. For humanity, it was in this moment that a nefarious creature of the shadows, slobbering maw and blood-stained coat, overcame its inner demons and transformed into the lovable plush doll that valley girls keep tucked into their purses. Sheep went from keeping watchful eyes on the horizon to having one of their former pursuers doggedly watch over them. Bernard, stoic in his mountain hospice, found help in a breed of a dog, who would carry messages up and down the slope and help travelers navigate to their august refuge. It was also in this moment that a new horror was born, one which up until this very moment lay dormant and wild in the backs of man's consciousness. Today, however, I aim to remedy our ignorance. I have pawed my way through the evidence and found the poisoned root which plagues our existence. Today, fellow citizens, I give you the first breath in life AD, after dogs. With the tools gathered in this presentation, you should be able to recognize the threat of the dog, assist in the canine wars, and protect yourself and your loved ones from extinction. You might well be thinking that this is all a farce, that, much like a wall against Mexico, the canine wars is merely a scare tactic to convince the masses of a common foe. But you can see here just some of the statistics that have been out there for years. Famous people from across our history have worked to try and raise awareness of the canine wars. Marie Antoinette, Edgar Allan Poe, Ernest Hemingway. Michael Jackson's xenophobia was well documented, but very few people know that Jackson himself worked against the Hollywood elite, who were trying to indoctrinate Americans with such propaganda as All Dogs Go to Heaven, Homeward Bound, and Air Bud. In fact, here's a quick glimpse into the history of the canine wars. As stated earlier, the parasitic relationship between man and dog began almost 40,000 years ago. Since then, humanity has been like a worm, blindly slithering its way through the dirt, severing its ties to the foundations of the universe in favor of things like fast cars, Beyonce albums, and the hit podcast Radiolabs. Over this time, the dog has made manifest several lines of defense. This includes the leash, originally a farming tool, but which in the hands of our furry frenemies has become an unbreakable bond. Their arsenal also includes things like dog parks, the nefarious institution of veterinarians, and dog tracks, which kept man sated for years through his gambling propensities. Dogs have also worked in the shadows to create the dreaded weapon El Juguete Chirriante, known to you perhaps as the seemingly harmless squeaky toy. Perhaps now you can begin to see the severity of the situation, but in order to fight an enemy, you must first understand them. With that in mind, let's turn to understanding the simple dog. Most dogs are made up of four characteristics. First, you have the demon's face, immediately recognizable, though varied in its manifestations. Usually the demon's face is accompanied by floppy ears, long rows of teeth, and a perpetually wet nose. You can tell when you've had some success in fighting off a dog when its nose begins to dry out. Dogs also generally have a lure, known colloquially as a tail. These are like sirens' calls, beckoning humans to do the biddings of the demonic dogs. Most people are already aware of the third part, the dog dong. Remember, to neuter and spay keeps Cerberus at bay. And finally, you have the most valuable creepy tool known as the elbow. More on that later. Let's look at some trends of dog behavior, anatomy, and tactics. How can you be sure that what you have before you is in fact a demon? Though it is reasonable to think that all dogs walk on four legs, some may have sacrificed a limb, or two, or four, in the fight to subdue humanity. Be wary of any long snouts, swervy tails, and full moons. But, you say, cats also resemble dogs, in that they mostly have four legs, a tail, and two ears atop their heads. How astute of you, young listener. Naive listener. Ignorant listener. Cats may very well look like their canine counterparts, but they're actually our peers in the battlefield. One notable characteristic of cats is that they have far less variation in common occurrence. Usually they're smaller than their canine counterparts, and their ears tend to look mostly the same. There are several techniques you can use to apply to discern whether what you have before you is a cat or a dog. You can, for instance, apply pressure to the creature's stomach, or you can try saying, "Here, kitty, kitty." You can even try saying simply, "Sit," or "Come here." Cats are autonomous antifers. They don't take well to commands. Let us turn our attention to some of the most effective weapons employed by the demodoggery. You can see here the list of apologists to the dog. This list is incomplete, partially because I ran out of time, but also because I was sent a cease and desist letter by the Church of Scientology. You know that means I was getting too close to the truth. If you have any information regarding known dog apologists, please send it to the email contained at the end of this presentation. And amongst all the arsenal that dogs have amassed over the years, there is one that is perhaps the most dangerous, the most cruel, the most hideous thing which dogs have taken for themselves. I present to you the elbow, a hideous thing to behold. Elbows don't belong on dogs. There are numerous, downright creepy aspects to the elbow that dogs have. For one thing, when a dog with an elbow takes their morning constitutional, it can resemble a human, squatting out in nature, reflecting the same horrors that Hieronymus Bosch tried to warn us about in his work. Not all dogs have elbows, but all elbowed dogs are evil. And it is your duty, listener, to stay vigilant. When you see a squatting dog with bendable limbs, use whatever tools you have on hand to take him out. Scream. Scream at the top of your lungs. Wave your arms in the air. Throw your Converse All-Stars at them. The checkered ones half a size too small, with a hole in the toe that you refuse to throw out, that your college fling gifted you for Veterans Day in some weird ceremony you never quite understood, but whose significance you now understand. Do it, listener. Throw your shoe at them. In conclusion, I hope now you may begin to understand the task at hand. I leave you with this. Please bow your heads and join me in prayer. Blessed be the Lord my strength, which teaches my hands to war and my fingers to fight, my goodness and my fortress, my high tower and my deliverer, my shield and he in whom I trust, who subdueth my people under me. 4 legs bad, 2 legs good. Amen.